My next guest has dedicated his life to fighting for equality, to include participating in a peaceful march on March 7th, 1965, across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, now known as Bloody Sunday. Mr. Horton has received numerous awards, from Outstanding Community Service Award from the state of Georgia, a Community Service Award from the NAACP of Tuscaloosa, to a Proclamation Day of Recognition from the city of Tuscaloosa. He is now the director and curator for the Sights and Sounds Black Culture Museum. Please welcome Mr. James Horton. Hello, Mr. Horton. Thank you so much for joining me today on In Contact. How are you?
I'm doing fine, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. So, Mr. Horton, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I don't know if that's a good question for me, because
come on.
Let me tell you why. Because my son say, anytime anyone asks you to tell them a little bit about you, you don't know how to shut up. You don't stop talking. That's why I said that. I'm James Horton. I'm from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I was born in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, moved away for 2 years, moved back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I did not leave again until 2000 when I moved here in the metro Atlanta area.
Really?
Yes.
So we are celebrating Black History Month this month, and we want to honor and really showcase some unsung heroes. And so we are so excited to have you with us. Can you tell us about your museum?
It's called Sights and Sounds Black Culture Museum. The museum has pretty close to 10 to 12,000 pieces of artifacts and literature that related to African American experience here in America. And what I've done is try to show the museum in a way where you see people who came to America as slaves and was enslaved, and you go through a time walk from that particular time period all the way to President Barack Obama at the present.
That is fascinating. So tell me why you decided to name it the Black Cultural Museum versus Black History Museum.
The museum was a traveling museum at one particular time. I traveled in and out of schools and around the country sharing it. And when I would go into the schools particularly and I would say, I'm here to talk about Black history, I would notice something.
What's that?
The African American or the Black kids, as soon as I said that, they would go like, and fold their arms and drop their heads. I'm going like, what is going on here? Okay, so I prayed and meditated about it, and when I do that, I just do this, and I need your help, and it comes. And what came to me was change the name, change it to Sights and Sounds Black Cultural Museum. Now when I go into the schools and people come around and they see Sights and Sounds Black Culture Museum, they're interested in the Black culture.
That is absolutely fascinating. So you got some divine, experiences to come down and help you rename it, rename the experience. So can you tell me a little bit about why you feel this history is so important to our community and abroad?
Well, my great-grandmother, she's responsible for all of this. I remember as a child sitting in a boat with her on the Black Warrior River in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I would always sometime ask her, why do they call this a Black Warrior River, you know? And she said to me, you know what, I'm going to share some with you. My grandmother told me that someone in our family was going to travel the world telling our story.
Wow.
You are that person. Wow. So I'm going to tell you what my great-grandmother and my grandmother said to me, and you're going to find out other information from other adults, and you're going to travel telling that story. Now, as a child, when she was talking to me, I stuttered when I talked. So I went, grandmother, and she looked at me. I said, I can't talk. She said, you will.
Wow.
One day you will talk, and they will have to shut you up. Okay. And she told me the story, and I said to her, you said never to tell a story. She said, young man, there's a difference between a story and a lie. I'm going to tell you the truth, and you share that truth. And that's what I've been trying to do from the time I was 6 or 7 years old. I would always like to be the storyteller. So every time anyone needed someone to tell a story about us as a people, they would go get that little boy.
James.
You know, go get little Jimmy. All right. So that's kind of how it really got started and was sort of put into me that I should travel around doing this.
So what kind of exhibits can people expect to see when they come to the museum?
You're going to get a timeline. The timeline is actually going to start with Meet the Collector. Now
Okay.
that has just been put in the museum in the last 2 to 3 years, because my sons visited me and they saw me do a tour. And when the tour was over, my youngest middle son said to me, "Dad, if I did not know you, I would think you are the lyingest black man in the world." Because the things that you share and show and say here about this museum, no one believed that you would have the opportunity to experience that. So I put in there that Meet the Collector. Then you go to Africa.
Okay.
And you will go to Africa and you will see Africa in a different perspective than most people see. See, because I grew up thinking that Tarzan, Jane, and Cheetah ruled Africa.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he beat on his chest
Right.
and animals run and,
Right.
and people, you know, bow down to him and all that. I'm so, okay. When I really started doing study, and the first thing I found out that was so impressive to me, that the land size of Africa is the largest continent that we have.
Absolutely it is.
You know,
yes.
and that was just amazing. And then I started seeing all these modern cities that was there, and started reading about the Moors and all these other people. And the most amazing thing that I think that happened as I started looking into Africa, I ran across something and I was reading, and it said that the first slave ship that arrived in America with people on it to be enslaved, what was the name of that ship? I don't suppose to be asking you questions, but I thought I would
Oh
toss
my
that one
goodness,
in.
you've turned the tide. I don't know. You tell me.
It was called the Good Ship Jesus. Now, after doing
That's
some
fascinating.
research, I found that was true, and then I'm going like, okay, so what happened?
What happened?
And then we go to Underground Railroad after we leave Africa. And the first person that you think of when you hear the word Underground Railroad is who?
Harriet Tubman.
Did you know that was not her birth name?
No, I didn't.
Okay, see? Man. All right. Also, you've seen the little lawn jockey, the little black gentleman standing out with the lantern in his hand. He played a very important part of the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
Have an idea what that is?
Tell me more.
Jamie the lawn jockey was a symbol to let people who was leaving and trying to get freedom. If you saw the lantern on at night and he was out in front of one of the plantation houses or one of the houses, you knew that was safe haven. So we leave the Underground Railroad. That's just bits and part of it. And then we go into an area that I call grandmother's and great-grandmother's kitchen.
Okay.
And what I tried to do there is showcase some items that's there that was part of my life as a child, and also some things that my great-grandmother and mother shared with me. But the amazing thing that happened when I started putting that exhibit together is that I kept coming up with all these things that black people invented. Right. And the one that really got me into really doing some serious research is something called the monkey wrench. Have you ever heard of that?
I have, but share some more.
Okay. Now that was amazing to me, because I always wondered as a child growing up, why did my grandfather and my father say, "Go get that monkey wrench, boy, and bring it to me"? You ever heard of a professional boxer who was the first black heavyweight champion by the name? Let's see. How I want to put this.
Are you quizzing me?
No, I wouldn't do that to you. But what you're hearing here is the way that I try to set the museum up, because I wanted to be educational fun.
Okay.
That's the other thing I call it. And I wanted people to realize that black history is not something, or black culture is not something that here in America that we should celebrate once a month. It's something that we should celebrate every day. And that person that I was talking about, the monkey wrench, is named Jack Johnson.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Mr. Jack Johnson is a person who created this wrench. And then I found out that's why they say, don't buy that monkey wrench, or go get me the monkey's wrench. So I started telling people, I say, you ever heard of the monkey wrench? They go, yes, I got one at home. I said, now when you go home, you share that with, and you call it the Johnson wrench. And they said, why do you want me to call it the Johnson wrench? I said, because Jack Johnson is the person who has a patent for it. and who invented the wrench.
Wow.
Those kinds of things that we tried to share. You go through a time period there where you meet Dr. King. Dr. King is a very special person during my lifetime. I am very, I had the privilege to meet Dr. King.
Really?
Yes, I did.
Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I wrote a book. And then the book is called From Little Jimmy to Mr. Horton. As a child, everyone called me Little Jimmy. As I grew older, even my mother and my brothers and sisters, they started calling me Mr. Horton. When I met Dr. King, it was my senior year in high school. And he came to our high school and asked me to do something that I refused to do. Now, to get what I refused to do, when the book is published, but that's a time that you will find out what happened with the conversation with I and Dr. King.
Well, I have a question. So you have traveled across many countries and sharing your story and also educating young people and old people about Black cultural history. Can you talk to me about the Bloody Sunday? And can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
As a child growing up, I would sit on my mother's front porch and watch the KKK host their meeting in a vacant field across the street from where I live. And for years, I watched that. But my mother would always say to me, I don't want you doing anything crazy or stupid. Stay away from the marches. We don't want you in the marches. Anybody asks you about marching, don't do it. I was visiting my uncle and aunt who live in Selma, Alabama. And I'm sitting on their front porch that Sunday afternoon. And 3 young ladies were walking down the street. And one of them came up on the porch where my friend and I were sitting. And she said, would you march with us? I and my friend, we're going to march downtown to protest so that our parents will have the right to vote. And I said to her, no, I cannot do that. My mother told me I'm not to get involved in those kinds of activities. She walks off the porch and she goes down and she talked to the other 2 young ladies that's standing in the street waiting for her. She and one of her friends walked back up on the porch and she stood there and to me and she said, look, if you march with us, we will let you hold our hands. What did I do?
You marched with them so you could hold their hands?
Oh, before she got back down in the street, I was standing down there singing We Shall Overcome. We marched. We got about halfway on the bridge, and all of a sudden, you could smell the tear gas, the smoke, the big horses, and people yelling and screaming and hollering. And the next thing I know, right at the top of my head here, there's a scar. Blood came running all over the place. Now, the first thing I thought about, you are in big trouble because your mother is going to kill you because she told you to stay away from these kinds of things.
Mr. Horton, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and being on In Contact. Thank you so much for being here.
You're more than welcome.
Be informed, you gotta know what's going on.